so they will tell you that. Okay, my system is on this operating system, so we expect this particular character as our line-ending character. So anyway, we are using returned line feed. And now we have those individual columns. Where did we see all these fields? Worker manager, location, job profile, and so on. Where did we see these fields? On our report. And this is a custom report transformation, so it is absolutely based on our report. So here are our fields. And you see, by default it says, prefix with a double quote, end with a double quote. I don't want it. We have taken care of the problem. So I will remove this. And if you want, you can change the name of the column heading overwrite as well. So instead of worker, you can say employee. So now, if I have the output, instead of the first field being worker, the heading in the heading, it will say employee. Instead of worker, it will say employee, because I'm going to transform it. I'm transforming it now. Manager again in the manager. Let me remove these double quotes. I don't need it. Manager can remain like this. Or maybe instead of manager, I may use the word supervisor. Okay. Location. Also. Let me remove the double quotes. Job profile. Also, I will remove the double quotes. Any problem by removing these double quotes? We know at the back of our mind that some data has commas. So will it be a problem now? Now that we are removing these double quotes from each and every field, can it cause an issue? We are going to use pipe as the delimiter. So if there is a comma as part of the data, yeah, that's absolutely fine. We expect that. That is the whole reason that we are changing the delimiter itself. Isn't it? Because we want to avoid this problem. That okay. Even if the data contains a comma, that's fine. We don't care. Because our delimiter is different. So here let's say, in Director of Benefits, Director of Employee Benefits. Before that there will be a pipe. And after that there will be a pipe. So now my system knows that whenever there is a pipe, I need to start reading a new field. So it hits the comma in the middle. Will it bother? No, right, it doesn't bother, because now it is looking for what? It is looking for a pipe. So if it has a comma in between, yeah, that is part of data. Cool. Great. So you are able to guess it. Perfect. Right. So now let's go back to our custom report, transformation. And here we have a few additional fields as well. One is the header. So you want to include the default header, right? What is the default header? The default header looks something like this. Worker, comma manager, comma location. Now in some applications they do not want this, right? They do not want a non-data header. So if you do not want that, you can remove it by just clicking on this checkbox. Include default header. If you do not want it, just uncheck it, right? I will keep it, and then I will show you what happens if I do not keep it. And then you have some optional things that you can put in the header as well. So you can click on these tags right. Insert tag. So you can click on it, and there are some tags that are available. The file name, line count, row count, and actual start date and time. For some of these applications, you may have to include these things at the top. Alright. Because it leads to better readability. If you send a large file, the receiving application can use this information to match whether the data has come through completely and successfully right. So let me do that in the footer section there. In the optional footer. You see, footer is optional. I may use it. I may not use it. I will use something called as row count right, or maybe instead of row count I will say number of rows. I will give a pipe, because I'm going to use a pipe as our delimiter right. Number of rows. And after that I will insert a tag called as row count. You see how I did it? I entered some custom text number of rows. This can be anything. It can be my name as well. So I can enter that custom text, and right after that I'm introducing a tag, which is a dynamic value. So, depending on the number of rows that are present in the file, I will see the row count. Why is it important again? Well, in olden days, when network speeds were not very good, and even in modern days, if you are sending a huge file, let's say you're sending a file, which is like 500 MB, 1 GB, 2 GB, right? You're sending a file that is 2 GB huge file, right? And in the middle of the transmission there is some network problem. Right, the entire file is not transmitted completely. When you started the transmission, you planned to send, let's say, 100 million or 1 million records, right? But ultimately a few 100,000 made through. The recipient will think, okay, this is the complete data, and they will start processing it right. Unless and until we have some checks and balances in place, but they can ensure that they have received the complete file. So how do we do that? So it was a very common practice in olden days to have this row count at the bottom of the file, right? So when the file was transmitted, they would get this row. So, first of all, if you get this row, that means that you have the complete file right. Because the last row has also been transmitted. Remember, in the trains, in those freight trains, you have a compartment at the end for the guard, right? And if you see the guard's compartment, that means it's the end of the train, at least in Indian trains. I'm not sure about the US trains. If you see the guard's compartment at the end, you know that that is the end of the train, right? So if you were getting this last record, you know for sure that this is the end of the file. But still, to be sure, you can match the number of data rows in the file with the row count. And then if that matches, that means you have received the complete file right. So these things used to be very common, especially when we had poor network speeds, but still we had to transmit large amounts of data. Okay, so we are done. I will save it. So I have kept the header as is. I have included the default header, and in the footer I have added an optional footer. Right, I have added the row count. So I am done. Now let's launch this integration one more time. I will keep the extension as CSV, no problem. And let me run this integration one more time. So integration launch. OK. Again, I should do determine value at runtime and next. OK. Alright. It might take a few seconds longer, but that's okay, it should not take too long. 11 seconds. Our file is ready. So let me open up the file. 1 second. Okay, so let me open up the file now. Why is it not opening in this one by default? So here I am dragging the file, and here is the file. Few changes. Can you see those changes? What is the most obvious change that we can see in this particular file? And you see, Director, Workforce Planning. That is fine, right? It's absolutely fine because it has a comma within it, but that is okay because our delimiter is now a pipe. What else? We changed the worker to employee right in the previous file. The first of the heading was worker. We changed that to employee. Any other change? We changed the manager. We made it as supervisor. We just changed the heading, nothing else, right? The data remains the same and we also changed this one length of service worker, so there is no underscores, etc., etc. You see, is its length of service worker showing up properly? And one more difference we have with the other file. We have also added a footer at the end of the file, correct? So let me scroll down to the bottom, absolutely to the bottom of the page. Number of rows is 645. Is it tallying with the report output? Right in the report. We had 645 workers. Number of rows is 645.